Welcome to the DIY Writer Show with the mild-mannered, slightly heroic host, Jeff Bacon.
Hey, this is Jeff from the DIY Writer Podcast, and today, kids, I got a treat for you. We're going to be talking with Matt Nagin. I don't know if you've read any of his books or anything like that, but you should be. Matt is a writer, an educator, an actor, a filmmaker, a stand-up comedian, and an author. So we're going to be talking about his books today, which will be really interesting. The first one we're going to talk about is Notes from the Bonfire, which is a special book, especially for 2020. But first, Matt, how you doing?
Well, I'm great. Thank you for having me on the podcast. And you just listed a lot of different areas. I know that sounds like I do 25 things at once. That's a lot to keep track of myself, but it's all sort of interrelated when you think about it. I'm just into creativity and expressing myself through different mediums, but it's really just one thing with different outshoots or something.
You know, when I first contacted you and we started talking about your books, I picked up Notes from the Bonfire and I started reading it, and it's a poetry book, and it's about, you said it was written during your struggle with Corona, which, yes. Actually, I'll let you go into it. Just tell me about the book.
Well, basically, here's what happened, and it was somewhat in the intro, but I'm from New York City. Right now, I'm actually in Montgomery, Alabama, but I lived there most of my life. And when the Corona hit, I was one of the first people to be infected. Mm-hmm. And I also do have asthma and a bit immunocompromised. So whatever it was, it hit me very hard, and I was very sick, and it was a long period of recuperating. So eventually I went to my parents' house. They were in Florida, and they're on Long Island. And so I was there alone. No one wanted to be near me because no one wants to hang out with the guy with Corona. I mean, no one's coming over with a beer. Let's have, So you got Corona, you're pretty much alone there. They have a nice house, but I'm there alone, and it's my childhood house. So it had a lot of memories and things. And in addition to being sick and sleeping, there's not much to do. And so I just, I've already written poetry books. I was overwhelmed also. It was a crazy time. Everyone was crazy. So I just started writing poems every day when I had the strength. And, I put together these poems, and then I was like, I have so many poems here that were written at this crazy time. I should put it in a book, because at least the thing about it is it's like a response, and it's raw to whatever's going on, the madness of that 2020 thing. Mm-hmm. In retrospect, I look back at it, some of it was kind of dark or a little, it really went into those zones, but that's how I was feeling at the time. And I wanted to have that time capsule thing of like, this is what a person feels like as he's suffering with Corona. As at that time we didn't know how many people were dying, and it was really kind of crazy. So I wanted a little of that chaos in there, and that sense of responding to it. And yes.
What I was going to say was, when you read the book, you read the introduction, and like you kind of explained it, and then you realize that, as you're reading the introduction, these are things that you wrote while you're going through Corona. And then as you read the poems and as you progress through them, you can see the light and the dark, the dark thoughts and the not knowing how this is going to turn out, and then kind of in retrospect, okay, look at this, being infected with it at the same time, getting shit information from the CDC, going through, I didn't get Corona. At least I don't know that I did. And
that's good that you didn't get it.
But it was so, as I read through it, I'm like, I could feel it, and I don't know how to explain it any better than, I could kind of feel what you're going through. I've read other people's accounts of it and adding in your poems, just kind of like, oh shit, it's so surreal. I really love it.
Wow, I appreciate that a lot. And I will say that before Corona, so I understand there's people out there who don't believe it's that bad. And some people it's not that bad. Some people are asymptomatic. Some people it's no big deal.
Mhm.
And I do want to preface that. And even myself, coming from a comedy background, when it was first coming out, I made some stupid video parodying, My Sharona. So I know everyone was saying Weird Al to do that, but this is like right when we were just hearing about it in China, just for
Right.
my Instagram or whatever, with the wig, and just not a full elaborate video, but a little clip. And I was sort of didn't take it that seriously until I got it, because I've never got anything like that. I've had flus and things, and people say to me, "Oh, it's a flu," or you're like, but until you get this, you don't really know what it is. And it was like threw me for a loop. I mean, I was in the ER at one point, but it was just I never expected my body would do the things that it was doing. And it really threw me. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of my books, I kind of like rewrite a lot and I change and blah, blah, blah. And this particular book, I wanted it to be somewhat like, this is what it's sort of like, get that feeling, because that you're in that moment. So this is what I felt then. I didn't want to edit it too much, if you get what I mean, because it was that time capsule thing. That's why the introduction, I have the date where I wrote it there, because I wanted, this is what I was thinking in March. I don't really think exactly like that now. Of course, there's been some time, there's some reflection.
Sure.
And you're in a different place. But at that time, that was the whirlwind everyone was in. So I put it out because I thought, oh, maybe someone else can relate to this, or it could be of help, or some just a way to respond to it, And a couple of the poems were in other Corona poetry books, like Conjoined Efforts, and a couple of publications. And I thought, well, make my own. So and then the photographer is a friend of mine, and so I solicited him, and then the illustrator to do some illustrations. And I thought that was another thing that I hadn't done before, which is include the imagery, and that adds another sort of level to it.
Yes, I don't think I've read anything concerning Corona, whether it be poetry or short stories or any kind of memoirs, that is as raw as what you wrote in your poetry, to be honest with you. I mean, it is, like I said, you really get the feeling of, today's no shit day, or today, I feel pretty good, or I do like the way that you make fun of the events that are happening in such a way that's like, for me, I can remember thinking some of the same things. You're watching the news, and all of a sudden, the CDC comes out with this report, and then they come out with another report that kind of contradicts it. It's like, no, it's just different numbers. Wait a minute. Just make this simple for us. How many people died? Or how many people are actually infected? And it was a kludge. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, it was such it almost felt like we were in some kind of zombie movie. It really, a lot of people compare it to Stephen King's The Stand, to use a novel, or just some kind of weird alternate reality. I mean, I always go back to my life in February. From February to March, it changed so dramatically. I was like,
Absolutely.
And everybody, some people, God forbid, but they've lost relatives, or they, all kinds of, that's just a horror. So that was another thing about poetry, which I do like, which is in comedy. Usually I probably spend more time doing comedy than say poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm responding to things with, a comedian tends to use the joke. This is a simplification, but there's the Freudian thing where he talks about a comedian will use a joke as a defense.
Sure.
So like if someone's picked on in a family, they'll joke about things to sort of not let it affect them, kind of thing. So it's powerful in that. It's a good thing to have and to use, but I wanted to show with poetry, somehow it exposes another side of myself. And like everybody, we have different facets. So that's my interest, one of my interests in it.
One of the things I notice when I watch comedians, and I don't know exactly what you call it. I mean, I'm not anything close to a comedian or anything like that, but there's like a comedic rhythm. You know, it's almost like you're talking in beats at times when you're delivering, you know, you're setting up the joke, you're delivering the joke, and then, you know, here comes the punch, whether, you know, it's a, you know, whatever the punchline is.
Sure.
And the one thing about your poetry is I feel the beats when you're, you know, when you read it, you're kind of like, okay, you know, and you kind of know when, okay, here it is. You know, I just, like I said, I kind of get into the stuff a little bit more than I probably should, but you know, oh, good. You're just reading poetry.
Well, no, that's interesting, because someone else asked me, I was on another podcast where it was asked about that, because he thought it was interesting, the comedian, that I do poetry and how I switched my mindset. Like if I write a poem or I write a joke. And yeah, I think there is, I would agree on that aspect, that there can be like a pacing thing, like a rhythm, like it's like jazz. But I think all writing has that to a certain extent, because like say it's a novel, a big part of it is figuring out what to cut out. I mean, that's almost more important than what you put in sometimes, you know? So
in comedy, you mean?
Not even only comedy, just any writing, I think. Like say it's a fantasy novel.
Sure.
And you have to decide, like, maybe I don't need all this information, or maybe I need more here, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, figuring out the pace, I think, is almost one of the primary objectives and one of the primary elements of creativity. I don't know.
I think you're right. I agree with you on that. I think the pacing and everything, like I said, I don't know if every other artist does this or not, but you look at somebody else's creation, whether, you know, I was watching your comedy clips that you have up on YouTube, and I've watched a few other things that that you've done, and then read your poetry and this and that. And like I said, I can feel those beats, you know, I can feel, you know, this is where it's going. And, you know, the fact that you bring that back to, you know, this is a writing you know, a podcast about writing basically, but, the fact that you bring that back to, you know, how you edit and everything else, yeah, it's interesting. You're right. You know, that's the way you edit. I know books, you know, in comedy, it's the same thing. I assume that, you know, it depends on here's what you want to put in. Here's the crap that needs to be taken out. And then all of a sudden the joke works or the bit works or whatever.
Right. Actually, I would say with comedy, this is arguable and someone will probably totally disagree with me, but I would say with comedy, you actually have to be more concise. Well, not, you don't have to be, but a better joke is off. Not you can't be long-winded, but I mean that you have to take out all the unnecessary elements in the joke. It's even more important.
Mm-hmm.
The wording is very important with comedy. Like you pause here, or you change a few words, or you cut things down. Comedians are always trying to do that. They're like editing tags, or, you know, okay, shorten the premise or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the pace thing is critical with comedy, but I think it is in all writing, because I'm working on a novel right now, and I noticed that in the editing of it,
mm-hmm.
that's like something I'm really going over is just that, like what I'm saying, that, oh, okay, I mean, the insight I got, okay, one of my heroes, and he's like a Mount Rushmore. I know he has the maybe controversial Woody Allen, right? That was one of the reasons that I went into comedy, because I always admired him. I always enjoyed his movies, his writing, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he did say in his new memoir, I don't know if you picked it up, the Apropos of Nothing.
No, I haven't, but.
Well, but he talked about when he was writing comedy. I think he got this from Danny Simon when he was working on your show or shows. I don't know if you're familiar, but that was like a big show, and the listeners, the Sid Caesar, Mel Brooks worked on it, Larry Gelbart, a lot of big names.
Right.
But he did say what I thought was interesting was one insight he got from working on that show is he said you always take out, you never just put a joke in just for a joke. The humor and what you're saying has to be also pushing the plot forward, or in some way moving the story ahead. Otherwise, it can become gratuitous. Even no matter how funny it is, he cuts things out if they don't move it up. That to me, I thought was helpful. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's exactly, if you had a writing coach, that's exactly what they'd tell you, is that, the plot needs to move. Your pacing is very important, and cut out all the other crap that it may be your little darling, but it doesn't actually contribute to the plot line. So kill it.
Kill it. Yeah, right. Which can be hard sometimes. And sometimes you have, as I'm doing that, I'm editing this book right now.
Are you willing to share anything about that book, or is it?
I would just say it's sci-fi and comedy, which is a combination that other people have tackled, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and other. There's a writer, I'm reading some of his, called Space Team, but I think mine is, hopefully every writer thinks theirs is unique, but I think mine is unique, and it's different than those. Is it influenced by some of that stuff? Yeah, I think so. And other comedic, I mean, even like we'll take a Woody Allen, like Sleeper, it's influenced by that, but it's its own thing, I think. And I've been working on this for a while, hopefully nearing, I don't want to jinx, but hopefully moving along towards, completing that, which would be a good thing to finish that.
Yeah. So you're looking for a release date early 2021, or?
Well, I don't have a publisher yet, so I didn't start that. I didn't even finish it. So
okay,
I could work with the same, in theory, the publisher I worked with before. I don't know. Possibly I would have to ask them or other publisher. With the humor book, the 10th Street Press, but I don't, or another publisher. I don't know. I haven't even completed it, so I can't really say. But hopefully, yeah. I actually have 2 other books too, so I have quite a number. With this quarantine, I've done some work from home, but a lot more time to write. So I've gotten a lot more done, basically. That's the one good thing as a writer. I don't know if that's your case too, but you have a lot more capacity to actually finish things. So that's good.
Yeah. And right now you're not doing a whole lot of touring or stand up or anything like that. You're just kind of,
Exactly.
there isn't a hell of a lot open.
So, and then I also before I was doing a decent amount of acting gigs.
Yeah.
Related to, dramatic acting and comedic acting, but most of that is dried up. And I do have an agent for that, but it's been so quiet now that I haven't really been doing anything with that. And so that's another thing that freed up some time, I guess.
Do you think that's going to pick up?
I think it will, but this vaccine rollout, and I think it may take a couple more months till things get better. But
yeah,
I don't know though for sure. I have some doubts. Maybe the vaccine won't. Maybe the virus will mutate. That's already mutating, and will exceed not to freak out exceed the vaccine or something, or they need a new vaccine. Who knows with this stuff?
Yeah.
So,
I talked to an author who's also he's a biological scientist, and he was explaining the ins and outs of the different vaccines that'll be coming out and everything else. And it was he has a very optimistic and hopeful view on it. He's actually from the New Zealand, but he thinks that by the time it gets this first round to be good, and then by the time the mutations come around and you get a second wave, that the next vaccine will be out. It'll end up probably being kind of like the flu vaccine, where you might have to get it every couple of years or something like that until this thing dies.
That seems to be the consensus. I'm always skeptical, and but it's possible. I don't know. I'm not a scientist by any means. Hopefully that is the case.
Don't we all just sit around and go, God, I hope you're right.
I mean, it would be nice to, do some of the things that we used to do, like go to a football game, and get a pretzel or something, and cheer, and with the huge crowd, and not have to worry that you're going to infect your whole family and kill your grandpa or something.
Yeah, I know.
luckily, I shouldn't say luckily, I was gonna say luckily, all my grandparents are dead, but you know, I don't have that problem. But you know, you never know. I mean, I'm free to say this, but like my girlfriend who's down here with me, she got it twice, just for example. You know, so that's another thing that people aren't really emphasizing, and other people I know seem to have that happen to them, and they say it really doesn't happen, but I don't know.
You know, the funny thing is that this is like around here. I'm in Wisconsin,
Okay.
and a lot of the college kids, when they went back this fall, if one of their friends had COVID, they're having COVID parties. So they'd all get together and have these COVID parties. And their theory was that if, you know, once you get infected, then it's done. They're treating it kind of like chicken pox.
Sure.
And it's like, well, guess what? It's not.
Right.
You know, it's more like, you know, the coronavirus, the actual coronavirus or the SARS virus has been around for a long time, and it keeps on coming back. So guess what? You can get it once and be tortured by it, and then get it a second time. And yeah, maybe it's not so bad, but you're going to get it a second time. You can.
Right.
You know.
Right. And that's like a Freddy Krueger thing. You know, you think he's dead, and then boom, there's a new Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, and then you know you're on number 8 or something. So you're like, this guy again? Jesus Christ! Get with the
Yeah, don't serialize the damn virus shit. That suck.
And you know, but it is a little bit of like that, right?
Yep.
It's you know, but I think the one thing that has been interesting as a writer about this, although I haven't really written about it explicitly outside of the poetry, is I think it has exposed interesting elements about human nature. Some of the stuff has been almost Shakespearean, I think, with the politics, and it's kind of like that aspect, I think, is fascinating. And of course, like everyone talks about, Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the plague, so you know,
Yep.
You never know. The sights are set high, but you never know what might be produced in our little dungeons here. You know, so it seems like you got some classic works of literature back there, by the way, some ancient texts, which is interesting to me.
Well, it's not that interesting. So on Amazon, you can buy that exact same print for about $40. It's a 10x8 vinyl sheet.
Oh, okay.
It's covering up my treadmill, my coffee maker, my printer, and all the garbage I don't want anybody else to see. So it's not really my study. Well, this is my writing room and my office and my studio, but that's hung up for a certain reason.
Oh, well, I thought you had, you know, maybe some of the great, some Voltaire or something like some, you know.
I do, but it's on my Kindle.
Or something.
My Kindle looks just like that.
Just have one huge Kindle, yes. And
I thought it was funny. My wife was making fun of me because I bought A Tale of Two Cities on my Kindle. I've got the book downstairs in the basement.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and she's like, "Why?" Because I want to read it every now and then, and you know, it's on my, you know, I've got the phone, you know, the note, whatever. And,
right, and also it's Dickens. You want to read Dickens?
Yeah.
On an actual paper copy. To me, there's something about the paper. I'm very old school. I don't know if it's that I'm Gen X, but I do own 2 Kindles, but I don't read them very often. I much prefer paperback or hardcover. Or something about holding an actual text. It's almost like a magic talisman, or you know, it has totemistic power. It's like you hold it, you're like the ring or whatever. It's sacred, and I like it. I don't know. I just something about this. It never equals the actual book to me. But I know I'm in the minority there, and people like to carry around one light thing, and I get it. But I don't think I'm going to ever change with that.
I will buy a paperback if I really love what I'm reading. So I kind of vet it out on my Kindle, and then I will buy a paperback if it's something that I want to keep. And that's kind of my archive, you know. as far as, because you don't know. A lot of these books, I read a lot of indie authors, and you don't know when you pick it up whether or not you're going to love it or not.
Sure.
But and it's always nice. I like getting signed copies of things. It's like, oh, this
Right.
person's,
One day that could be worth something, right?
it could be, but and there's some books I like to get my Stephen King books in print,
Right. Yeah, I like reading his stuff in print too. Why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. There are some books I do go to Kindle. Sometimes at the price differential, usually it comes down. That's my Jewish side, If it's 99 cents or $14.99. I'm like, all right, buddy, you're kind of pushing me over here to the Kindle.
Right.
You know what I mean? You did it to yourself. Make them a little more similar. And some of the books, I try to keep my books low priced if I can.
Yeah.
But a lot of the books are $35 on paperback.
Sure.
Which is a little steep, That's going to give me like 4 years of Netflix membership, for one book. So
close to it, yeah. But does it give you the same entertainment? That's what it comes down to. Is this book actually going to entertain me? And not only entertain me the first time, but the third time I read it. And that's kind of when I look at it. When I look at a book on Kindle, it's like, okay, I want this paperback. Is this something that, when I'm old and gray, is this something that I want to have in my collection?
Sure.
And I think that, like I said, the entry price into a Kindle book is cheap. When you actually commit to getting the paperback, then, that book means something to you.
That's a good point. So I have such a history of buying books. In fact, I used to sell books years ago. So I had such a collection that, although I had to get rid of a lot of them that's a long story, but living in a New York City apartment, I had like a side business where I would sell books on Amazon. And my girlfriend at the time was overwhelmed because the apartment was stuffed to the rafters with books, so, and then under the table, coming out of the oven, out of the thing, you had to walk through like a corridor and stacks to the top.
So you lived in your warehouse?
Basically, yeah, because I didn't want to pay for a warehouse, and it was a low business, and it became like a hazard to, there was nowhere to move, and she was freaking out, and I eventually had to sell them or get rid of them. A lot of them I got for free. At that time, people were like, there was like an indie bookstore around me who said, we're getting rid of all you have to do is come pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
I had thousands of books for free. So then I started selling them. But when you're living in New York City in a small place, it's not if you have a warehouse, it's fine, but it's not. It's a hazard to the relationship. Just say that, It's not as bad as some other things like hookers or something, but it's like slightly below that,
Selling books or hookers? Okay, yeah. Guess I'll sell books today.
Right.
That's hilarious. Looking at the amount of books that you have on your Amazon profile, the next one I did pick up, I started reading, actually picked it up today and started reading it, was Do Not Feed the Clown.
Great. Thanks for picking it up.
That is, well, I like your writing. I really do. It's punchy.
Thank you.
It's punchy. And, one of the things that I do believe, I think that comes from your comedy background. I think so. I don't know. But I like I said, I enjoy your writing. I enjoyed the poems. And now that I'm reading this, I read probably about 15 pages into it. It's like, oh yeah, this is something I'm going to enjoy. It's just, it's kind of fun, and it's just kind of, it's kind of wild and fun,
Well, thanks for saying that. And this book is the Do Not Feed the Clown, in case anyone wants to pick it up, is a totally different vibe than the notes from the Bonfire. So you can see different angles. You might be like, well, are these the same person who wrote both of these? I don't know if someone would think like, or this, but yeah, the Do Not Feed the Clown. I did put a, every writer puts a decent amount of work on it, but yeah, that's sort of like showing different humor pieces that I collected
Mm-hmm.
and wrote, and there's a lot of new ones in there over a period of a few years of sort of different contemporary topics, social satire of various elements of our culture, but you know, short and like you said, punchy, hopefully. And so you could like pick one up and just read a couple pages, and then pick another one and read out of order. And there's a whole history of books like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of like what I was trying to go for. Hopefully, entertain someone, give them a. I'm glad you found it, you know, enjoyable, and give them a laugh. And it's really good now because with like all this pandemic, you know, it's good to have a laugh about things, and you know, just
Absolutely.
yeah.
Sorry, I had to take a drink there. You know, I try not to give too much away, but you know, the opening line is just priceless. You know, where you're like $8.50 of I think it's a $12 trillion GoFundMe or whatever the
Yes.
hell it was.
Yeah.
It's contributed by two people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a guy who claims he was abducted by these alien race, the Klongors, and sodomized, and he wants to take a legal case against this civilization in a distant galaxy, and he needs money for the rocket fuel and then entertainment on the rocket, you know, and astronaut ice cream and whatever, enough DVDs, and but
Yep.
you know, I was trying to a lot of it was parodying. You know, we have a GoFundMe culture. We used to have, you know, just it was just pure homelessness. But now it's more like upscale. I understand people are going through a hard time, but there's so much of a quick GoFundMe. I got a problem, so I was a little bit tongue in cheek with that. Although I do support GoFundMe's, and I'm not. Don't come after me because I said this is your GoFundMe.
Well,
you have, you know,
I'll go ahead and say I'm very choosy on the GoFundMe's that I actually participate in. You know, it's got to be a good cause. It can't be, you know, well, I haven't been able to, get a job in quite a while, and it's like, you can do what the rest of us do and go work at McDonald's, or I mean, there are jobs out there. Don't be so picky.
Right. Or just do it. To me, it's a little more noble. Do what they did in the old days. Buy a gun and rob your nearest Chase Manhattan. You know what I mean? You know, at least that takes initiative. You've got a plan. You've got to learn how to crack the safe. You know, you got to hire security. But just to just beg your friends, I don't know. To me, it's weird. It's a weird culture. But I know it's a different world now. But I didn't grow up with that. You know, if you were broke, you were broke. You know, you have to go to OTB, or you got to rob something, or you got to figure something out. Obviously, get a job is the best.
Yeah.
But you had to figure out some way to get that money. There wasn't GoFundMe. So that's probably where I'm coming from, a different angle on that. But
and that's I don't remember exactly the organization. Wasn't it Doctors Without Borders? Isn't that what your notes from the Bonfire? Isn't that?
Yeah. So half the proceeds will go to Doctors Without Borders. The reason I picked that is that they do some COVID work. I was trying to find a charity that does some COVID work, and the book's all about COVID. So
right.
So fighting the pandemic and whatnot. But that's not a scam or anything. It's not like, I'm trying to.
No, I didn't think so. And that's my mistake. I was going to mention it when I introduced you in the book, and I forgot. So, but yeah, I mean, that is, there are quite a few authors out there who do that kind of a thing, and you buy their book and then they donate a certain amount of their proceeds or royalties to certain charities, and I try and support them as much as I can.
So that one is 50% to Doctors Without Borders, the poetry book. The other one I have the publisher, so that isn't on that one. But on the if you do Notes from the Bonfire, 50% of all proceeds will go to the Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah.
So that's good. You're just kind of doing a charity as well as buying it. And
and it's well worth the read. Like I said, that's one of those where I'm probably going to pick up that paperback, to be honest with you.
Cool. That's great.
It is that kind of a book where it's like, yeah, I'd like to have that someplace just stuck away just in case the neutron bomb goes off and I don't have access to my damn Kindle anymore. You know, or Bezos goes bankrupt and I lose all my books. You know.
Right, and his wife is she really lucked out? I'm talking about hitting. You know, when you she donated $4 billion to charity this year.
Yeah,
you got $4 billion in chump change. That's impressive. That didn't even hit her bottom line. You know, that's just like a little extra tip when she goes to Applebee's. You know, so
yeah. Let me see what I have on my dresser. Hang on. Oh yeah, it's 4 billion. Yeah. Jesus. You know, and I think, you know, if you're gonna name anybody as a benefactor of COVID, it would be Amazon at this point.
Of course, yes, they seem the benefactor of, you know, they're a little bit like they've got a little bit of the robber baron of like the Rockefellers and the Carnegies. They do offer some great services. They do have good customer service in a certain way. So I don't want to only say negative about them, but they're also, you know, it's a monopoly in a way. It's just they own everything, and there is an evil aspect to just being so powerful, just in itself almost.
I would say in general retail, they're like a Rockefeller. I would say in actually publishing, they're more like a Gambino. No, just kidding.
No, yeah, that's actually a good analogy. I think there is an element of that because they do push out the lesser competitors. And, and then, you have to publish on KDP and the exclusive. And yeah, I wish they had a little more emphasis too on worrying about the writer's creativity and the art of their productions, because there's so many problems that seem like I was having a problem now with this poetry. The look inside, there's it doesn't look right, and a lot of people have. I'm not the only one who's had this. A lot of times the look inside the book, the spacing is off or whatever, and there's a lot of things like that with especially with poetry, that can be like almost nightmarish, you know. So that's what I mean by like I wish they had a little more. They have so much money, they have so much power. Put a little more into the creativity and the artfulness of your authors who are going with you and are working with you, you know.
Well, you know, in the problem with that specifically is that if somebody's sitting there and they like the cover and they click on the look on the inside and they see something it's just formatted weird, but the book isn't like that. It's just the look inside. You've just turned that person off from buying that book.
Right.
You know, I mean, they're very, you know, I mean, they have to like the blurb, they have to like the cover, and then they have to like the look inside. And those are your three basic sales pieces that you have when you're selling this book to God knows who around the world. And if you don't have that all just dialed in right, you could lose sales on that.
Absolutely. And big sales. You got to always, you know, that's in anything in entertainment, I think. But I'm saying anything in life, you know, you only have that one chance. Of course, you've heard this cliche to make that first impression. But it's true that what you put out, and the way I like to think of it is what you put out is a reflection of yourself. So you always want to try to do the best quality you can. I mean, within reason, obviously.
Right.
We're imperfect beings, but you try to put out quality. Otherwise, you can lose. It's hard enough to get an audience. So, you know, and then Amazon doesn't make that easier. That's what I'm saying. They don't really. That's not their concern, you know. So that's a problem I have with them, and among other things. Like, I don't know, what's your thought on them in terms of what is the issue there?
As far as the formatting, or as far as just Amazon?
In general, with Amazon and authorship.
I think that, you know, Amazon, I think as an indie publisher, or an indie author, I guess, I owe them a certain amount of a certain debt of gratitude, because they really turned book publishing on its ear, and they allowed the entry into, you know, instead of writing 142 query letters and getting denied 141 times, they made it so that, you know, if you have something that is unique and you're willing to put in the time and the effort to actually publish it, you can be a self-published author. You can do this easy enough yourself. And, so they've taken a lion's share of the book market. I mean, I think they're 70% of the world book market. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but I think I read that at one point in time. And, so I mean, every person that's self-published owes them a certain debt. Now, fast forward to where now they have kind of a monopoly. It's becoming more and more pay for play. You can publish a book and it'll get a little bit of a bump, but unless you're advertising with them and doing things a certain way, as they specify, you're not really going to sell too many books. You can advertise on Facebook and drive them into your Amazon, or you can, do whatever you want, but you're not going to get as good of a pop as far as sales go if you run zero advertising on Amazon. Now, for some people, and I think it depends on what genre you're writing in, and also what your fan base. So, but I think when you're just starting out, it's pay for play. And at some point in time, if you sell enough books through Amazon, they'll start, promoting you with their newsletters and, give you some Amazon deals and stuff like that. But, and it's a capitalistic market. I get that. But on the other hand, it's starting to make the entry for newer authors harder because they don't have any, unless they have some money banked up to actually promote it. It might not do as well.
Right. And I think that's a great point. And, I guess that's what I didn't realize the degree to which advertising was the key linchpin, but I know that's how YouTube works. And I definitely don't think that Bezos is sitting there thinking, let me help these indie authors follow their dreams. This is just my opinion. I think what he's thinking there is, let me capitalize on this market where I can get these people and get more and more of the people to write books, and then I can profit off it because they're going to sell to their people and they're going to sell to their people. And then I don't know, maybe that's cynical, but that's just the vibe I get.
The thing that as an author community that we have is we have, people like Mark Dawson and Craig Martell. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're, Michael Anderley, they do a lot with, they sell enough books and they're indie published, they're self-published.
Right.
And they have some influence within Amazon. They sell that many books where Amazon says, so what are you guys thinking about this? And these guys are special to the industry because they listen to the smaller authors. Right. And they'll actually bubble things that they deem worthy, honest complaints and concerns back up to Amazon. And you do see some changes there. So I think Amazon and its management, I think, tries to be somewhat helpful to indie authors. Jeff Bezos, I don't know. I can't really speak to that, whether or not he's, gives a crap about, the book business or not. I assume he does because, I think it makes him a good enough amount of money, and they've done enough acquisitions. They own Goodreads, they own, or Audible, and that's where you can get your audio books and stuff like that. And they've bought, they've got 70% of that book market. So it's probably a significant amount of money, to make sure you watch it. But I don't think that's probably his main concern, but he does have people that actually,
right.
You will listen to certain people.
I mean, he had to rise to his level for certain reason. I know they have the emphasis on customer service. I did say that. So I agree with that. It's just, that was my qualm. But anyway, I do hear what you're saying. And the democratization is a double-edged sword. It's great because now anybody can put out a book. The negative with that is
anybody can put out a book.
It's harder to distinguish yourself from all the other books. Right. Because now the sea of books, And so you have to really find a way to find your audience, which is possible, but I would say that's the downside because there's so many more books.
Mm-hmm.
Each book is less of a unique thing, if you get what I mean.
Yep,
But,
absolutely.
I mean, that's fair. I guess that's a fair, all's fair in love and war, but you know.
It is, and I, you know, I mean, there are some people out there that put out a book that, you know, has never seen an editor, you know, and they make a cover off of Canva, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it does end up being a sea of books, and you have to stand out. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you know, that's just kind of the way it is.
Right. And it is challenging now. Writing is a, for me, it's my first love. You know, I always, that was always my main thing. Actually, I only did stand up later when I was going to this writing group and they were laughing a lot of times at things I wrote, which a little bit surprised me, actually. Some of it, I wasn't even trying to be that funny.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was cracking up. And I was like, you know, because he had us read it. So I kept going with that. And that led me into a little bit with stand-up. And then I did some sketch thing one time and people liked it. And that's how I sort of fell into stand-up, but it wasn't a natural fit. I'm definitely more interested in, always that's been my main thing is writing. But you know, the market is so difficult that I've branched out to some other areas.
Mm-hmm.
But
you branched out. You branched out quite a few areas.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that we kind of talked about pre-show, adding comedic content into writing, you know, that's something that some people have a natural ability to do. And that's something that, you know, some people have to work very hard at. You know, like you said, you know, you're reading some stuff in a reading group and people are laughing and you're like, what the hell are you laughing at? It's just something I wrote, you know, and, you know, they find it funny. I mean, do you have any tips for anybody on how to actually interject that comedy into the writing to make it a little lighter? That's a tough question.
I know it's fun. I'm trying to think of what I do or how to do it. I think, okay, I think one way to do it, and this is, it's always going to be a little bit of an oversimplification, but I'll do my best to give you like a pathway. One thing I do, a lot of times in a first draft, I write more what I feel, a little more straight, let's say, straight man, where it's not as humorous, although the concept itself, there's two different things, but let's assume it's a concept that's not funny, because the concept itself could be funny, in which case you don't have to do that much. Okay. But let's assume that it's just a straight thing, but I want to interject a little humor. It's a serious situation. A guy breaking up with his girlfriend, like it's a story or whatever it is. Yeah. Or a guy, his mother's dying of cancer, whatever it is. Let's say a guy that's a little more morose, let's say that. A guy is going to his room with his mother. She has cancer. She's in the bed, right? Yeah. And he's comforting her. Now that, if it were a straight dramatic piece, would be something people are like, whoa, I don't think you can put comedy here because this is like a very serious. Well, actually, that is something that a lot of times could use a little comedy, of course, because it'll lighten the mood and make the drama more effective. But how to do it in terms of the writer, as the writer of that scene, let's say, in the first draft, I would probably write a more serious thing for the most part, my feelings and just what I thought and more dramatic rendering. And then in a second draft, go back and see if there are a couple points where I can twist things a little bit and turn things, instead of being so emotional about something, maybe comment on that on myself, or comment on the situation, or throw in a joke or two, and then you twist that thing where it was so dramatic. It's, a lot of times the most dramatic moment can be twisted into a comedic thing because of the misdirection. So I think that's one good way to really add humor, which is like to go against the grain of what people expect and of what even you were feeling at the time, if you get what I mean. Yep. Now, still take true. The one thing with humor, though, is you always want to be true to who you are. So it's almost like there's different wavelengths or valences that we're all on. So you're still true to yourself, but it's that other side of yourself that's coming out. And can that be true? And you can still have, a lot of times you can still have that dramatic moment, but also have the humor layered in. And that I think is a good, if you're writing like a novel or something, that's a good, that's really helpful for your writing, because otherwise it can be too much on one note. You want to hit different notes, kind of thing.
And I agree. Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's hard for me to say, yeah, I agree with you, because I'm not a comedy expert. You know, I'm not a comedian or anything.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I just it's hard to, it's a different thing between explaining it and doing it, though, of course, like anything.
Right.
But I do have a teaching background, so I'm trying, but not with comedy, but with regular writing. But I think hopefully I'm explaining it in a way that people can
I think you're conveying it very well. The one thing that I notice about comedy, especially comedy that I enjoy, you know, just from a you know, somebody who watches that kind of stuff, is that there has to be an element of real to it. You know, it can't be just all silly shit. It's got to be, you know, something that, you know, this is a real situation, and then, you know, you turn it around and you know, there's got to be something in that real situation, like you said, with somebody tending to their mother that had cancer, you know, whether it's, you know, some orderly coming in and doing something stupid and, you know, you're laughing about it, or, you know,
Sure.
I kind of like scenes where, you know, there's some hallucinations going on with the person that's sick, you know, and they say some really weird shit, you know, and like in front of their spouse. It's like, oh shit. Yeah. No, that didn't happen, mom. You know, I mean, just stuff like that kind of twists the situation. So you have this tension that you're building with the drama, and then all of a sudden you release it, and then you go back to the tension and build it back up, and you can release it again with either, you know, comedy or, you know,
Exactly.
it's drama.
Exactly. And I think that is a key thing that you just pointed out too, which I didn't even get into, which was, that's on a more basic level. Yeah, I totally agree that there's always exceptions, but for a lot of comedy, if there's some corollary in your life, if there's some thing that you're accessing within yourself, that's, at least for me, and then there are other writers that are different, but if there is some way in which you can connect it to something within you, it sometimes works better, especially in like a scene, like a story or a novel. You know, a lot of times I end up writing in some way about things, even though it can be totally different, there's some element that is the same, like in, you know, so I agree completely that it should access something. And that also could be something both within yourself or within the larger world. Those can be combined, because they're, you know what I mean? Like something in current events, a trend that's going on, or a trend in your personal life, either one or combined to that. You know?
I have to say, one of the inspirations that I have as far as writing goes, and something that I heard this right at the right time, where I was, you know, about ready to put out a book. And it was like, oh my God, you know, what happens when I, you know, fall down and fail? Everybody's going to know that I, you know, and, you know, I'm an idiot and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, lots of nervousness and everything else. And, you know, that first book's like, oh shit, what did I do? You know?
Sure.
And it was actually Eddie Murphy talking about getting yelled at by Bill Cosby. Do you know that bit? You know, where he's talking to Richard Pryor and said, man, Bill Cosby called me up and he's like railing me for cursing.
Oh,
and,
I think I heard a part of that.
Richard Pryor goes, people laughing? Yeah. Well, tell Bill Cosby, have a Coke and shut the fuck up, you know? And that stuck with me as far as, you know what, write the book and screw it. Yeah. You know, it's kind of that same thing. You're going to get criticized. You're going to get this, you're going to do that. And when you're trying to add comedy into something, you know, I don't think anybody's really good at anything without practicing. And so it's just going to be something that you're going to have to work on, you know. And
sure. And then you bring up a great topic, because I struggle that with myself. I've been writing a lot longer than I've been publishing. I've published a lot of shorter things. So a lot of times with abandoned projects, that's another story that can be about the creativity that would take a little more depth. But back to what you were saying about the Cosby, this humor book, Do Not Feed the Clown, by the way, had a few pieces where I thought, wow, I really pushed the, you probably didn't get to them because they're later on, where I really pushed the envelope on some touchy subjects, you know, but I think I was trying to then, you know, as every comedian, you try to walk the line, and you gotta be careful who the target of the humor is. But you know, there was some race stuff in there, some, you know, stuff about sexuality, about various things, and so, you know, where I was like, well, how are people going to take this? And I think there may have even been one or two, although most of the reviews have been luckily very positive, one or two who were, you know, most of it's been good actually, but I expected a little more of that. Like, oh, someone's saying, you know, this is offensive or whatever it is, you know, with our cancel culture. So that was definitely in my head. It didn't happen so much in this book. Maybe it's not many people read it, but you know, that was it was looming there, wondering like, am I going to get that? Now I'm used to that a little bit because I've been doing stand up. You know, you need sometimes, but it's a little different with stand up because someone says something, you can sort of respond there and then. This is like, here's the book, take it, and you can take it any way you want. So yeah, I think all writers go through that. I certainly do. And you wonder, like, are people gonna be offended? Are they gonna be this? Or are they gonna think like, am I too, the other thing is, you know, a lot of times I think, oh man, I'm too exposed on this, or, you know, like I'm expressing like I thought with this book, I was thinking, oh, I'm so vulnerable in this, like, or what are people gonna think about me? It's not like a manly thing to do, because, you know, you have that training, like with my father and various other people. So you write poetry, you know, people get ideas. But so yeah, I think these are common things that writers go through. And all I could say is for myself, my shrink gave me a good insight, which was, you know, for me, myself, I don't know if this helps anyone else, I'm complex. I have multiple sides. I have a more sensitive feeling side, and then I have a comedic side. They can both exist. It doesn't mean that I'm a pussy or something like that. Maybe I am to some people. You know, some people say, you know, or I'm not as manly because I write poetry, but some people, you know, my uncle, he saw me writing poems, he was worried I was gay, you know, and he gave me a you know, so, but not that there's anything wrong with being gay, any listeners. I'm just saying that I got that from my family. I'm sure a lot of guys may get that because it's not a manly thing to do, maybe to write poems or express yourself or to express vulnerability. But I think in terms of writing, some of the best writers, they went there and they expressed that vulnerable side as well as other things. So I try to just fight through it and put it out there anyway, you know?
I think that anybody that thinks that, you know, and, you know, I'm not going to preface that with no offense because I really don't care. Anybody who thinks that, you know, a guy writing poetry is, you know, somehow feminine or, you know, not a manly thing to do, screw yourself. You know what? You know what? You get off your butt and you write something and put it out there for everybody else to read and criticize. That's the damnedest, that's the gutsiest damn thing you can do. You know, you're exposing yourself. Not only that, but it's, you know, whether it's fiction or memoirs or, you know, you're trying to be an expert on something and publishing something, or poetry where you're exposing your feelings to the rest of the world. That's damn courageous. You don't see many people really doing that. You know, I mean, you see a lot of these authors that are not authors, but people that publish books that write, you know, that hire ghostwriters to write them for them because they can't do it. They just want to be a published author, and they'll spend thousands of dollars on having somebody else write their shit for them. And, you know, they'll also criticize other people for what they wrote. And it's like, dude, you haven't written anything but an email. Shut up. You know?
Fair. And a lot of people don't, they're somewhat protected that way. But that's fine. That's their choice. Like, you know, I have a relative like that. He doesn't like, not only does he forget about writing things, he doesn't like to reveal much about himself to others.
Right.
He's very, very much in a cocoon kind of thing. And he feels safer that way. He feels happy. That worked for him. And that's all power to him. But, you know, not everyone's like that, as I would say.
I think it takes a special type of person to basically put out a book and then walk into the parking lot of a Walmart or a Target or whatever, drop your pants and then walk around and say, okay, judge me. I mean, that's basically what it is. I mean, that's the feeling you get when you push publish, and all of a sudden it's like, oh God, my mom's going to read this, all of my relatives. Am I going to be able to go to a family reunion? People that I know are probably going to pick it up and go, oh, cool. Oh, neat. Okay. Yeah. And then not talk to you when they see you on the street or something like that. I mean, those are the, fears that build up in your mind, and you push publish anyway, saying, you know what, screw it. If they don't know me and they don't like me after they read this, well, then they probably weren't my bud, or something.
Well, I think that is even for me, it's much more so when you get into things that are connected to real people. So I do have somewhat of, it's not really a memoir. It's like essays about the things that happened to me. It's somewhat like a memoir that hasn't come out yet. But that book is finished. And I haven't even tried to start marketing it yet. But there is some concern because in that book in particular, I write about a lot of real people. I could change their names, but my dad is still my dad. You know what I mean? So in that book in particular, I think I go pretty, and that was finished this year, with the pandemic. But I go pretty raw into some things. And yeah, so I do have some hesitation, but I think that is part of the, now I don't know that I pulled it off, but you still may offend people or upset people. But I think that is part of the skill of the writer, finding the right balance of still respecting and honoring the people, but also being true to what you're trying to say in the comedy, and finding that balance where you feel like you can just do it within yourself. You can't control how people are going to react, but you can feel within yourself that you gave them a fair shake, but still stay true to whatever your mission was. I think, I don't know that I did it, but I think I accomplished that to a certain extent, and it still may alienate all of them. But but you understand what I'm saying, at least for myself. And that took me a long time because I started this 10 years ago and I couldn't do it then. Then I picked it up again and multiple times. Only recently I was able to complete it. So that's another thing that some, a couple people asked me, that are writer friends, that were having a trouble, they couldn't finish it. And that's another thing. Sometimes you're just not ready to finish that thing there, and you just have to put it down, and like later you can finish it for whatever reason.
I know some writers that have, written 2 books and then lost interest in a project, went on and wrote 5 or 6 other books on different series, and then came back to that series and then wrote, 3 more books to finish off that series. And all of a sudden that series is a best-selling, in the space of 5 years or 10 years or whatever it was. And, you're absolutely right. It depends on, if you're ready to finish it, you probably will if you're a writer. It just may not be, in the same time period that you think it should happen.
Exactly.
Your publisher or whatever. I mean, sometimes these things take years to build up, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, got it. And then it's really easy to write when you get that inspiration. But if you're not ready to finish it, it can be the most god-awful process in the world.
True. And also, you just, like for me, I noticed myself, it's not that I didn't finish a draft of it. It wasn't up to what I wanted it to be.
Right.
So I wanted to put out something and of course you always get better, but you wanted to get that tone that was right, that was both comedy, but like I was saying, like all these different things, and mixing them, it takes a certain level. Like I just don't think I had the ability at that particular time to do it at a level that I wanted to. Now I feel, of course, there's things I would want to be better of it. It's never perfect, but I felt, well, my goal is to feel pretty good about it. If I can feel pretty good about it, there's always going to be things that could be better. Because like Conrad said, oh, no work is finished, it's only abandoned. but so there always can be things that be better. But if you're like, you reach a point where it's diminishing returns and it's sort of like, okay, this is sort of what I was going for, or as close to what I was going for. And I like a lot of elements of this. that's when I'm usually feeling, okay, this is good. You just have a feeling. You just have a feeling, okay, this is done. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
It's almost like it feels like it came to a completion. I mean, it's good enough to go out. I don't think you ever feel like, and I don't know, some people may, I don't know, but for me, it's never that, oh, this is perfect. It's ready to go. It's like, okay, this can go, but
right.
you know, and then you may reread it or look at it or read some criticism on it, go back, go, oh crap. Yeah, I should have fixed that, you know,
Sure.
but you
Sure.
don't know. You know, it's like those people that find one spelling issue or one misspelled word in a book and they're like, oh my God, worst book ever. Yeah, okay. I had 6 people look at this damn thing and everybody missed that word, but you got it. Good job. How many books have you written?
Right. Yeah, there is only so much you can do. But you know, what for me, my struggle, I don't know if this is because I figure there's a lot of writers listening, maybe, or you
Yep.
know, my struggle was always, there was a great essay by Thomas Wolfe, not Tom Wolfe like Bonfire of the Vanities, Thomas Wolfe,
Right.
the guy from like the 30s, and it was about how he couldn't, like, he's starting as a writer, and there was no boundaries to his writing. He just started writing and describing everything. I think he said something like millions of words was his first novel, his original draft, or 900,000 words.
Yeah.
Like, he wrote some crazy amount. He described everything. He didn't even know. It eventually became like 2 or 3 books,
Mm-hmm.
but it took a long process. And he went through all this thing. He wasn't ready to finish it. He was just having to like just keep writing and writing and writing and writing to develop his craft. And then when he reached that point, then it was coming out. So
Right.
always related to that because I wrote so many things that I was unhappy with. I can't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And drafts of books, a lot of them I'm going back now and trying to see, oh, can I work this and finish it? But drafts of books, novels, stories, hundreds of, everything. Incomplete screenplays. Only in recent years that I'm finishing things on a much better level. I don't know what it is. It's just as you maybe better insight or whatever it is. You can't quantify it. But I wanted to say for writers out there that are struggling, don't give up. That's part of the thing, I think. Maybe it's a test to say, like, how much do you really want this? You got to really keep working at it. It's almost like being a monk. I really think writing is like that because it's a practice. You got to keep doing it, and then hopefully, eventually, it pays dividends. But it's not like it's just like 1, 2, 3. If you want to get rich quick, I would do something else.
This ain't the business for you. Nope. It every successful author that I know and talk to, it's 15, 20 books and then things start happening for them. Some of them it's 12, some of them, and every now and then you hear about somebody that, they wrote their first book and boom, they sell 10,000 copies the first day. That does happen, but that is lightning striking. A majority, 98% of the writers out there have to slug through a bunch of books and then you start getting noticed and then you build up a readership, and it's a slow process. It is, the tortoise and the hare, and you're the tortoise.
And I think that's actually in all creativity, there's something to that. I mean, like if you look at various fields, I mean, a lot of times that is how it works. Like Picasso, I think he did 60,000 works or something. So there are the ones like a Kubrick, who's my favorite director, who only made those like 12 films, I believe it is, and he crafted them with all that attention to detail and perfection.
Yep.
So there is that kind of artist, or there's like the Woody Allen who just puts out the movie every year. So there are the different styles. I'm not sure which is better. Are you more interested in just having a few really good works, or a lot and just put out a lot of there's arguments for both.
Yeah, I don't think there's I don't think there's a better or a worse. You know, I think they're different things and they're different tastes for different days. You know, there might be a day where, screw it, it's a Woody Allen day. I want to go watch something that he made, or, read something that he wrote or whatever. And then, on a different type of day, it's just like, if you pick a TV show or you're picking a book up to read, it really depends on, if you've had a really rough day, there's nothing like picking up some satire or
Sure.
picking out a comedy or something like that, just to lighten you up.
Sure.
And other days when you're in a really good mood, let's watch a drama, or some sort of a thriller or something like that. I think it's really whatever you're in the mood for. And I think I get the most out of things when it's contradictory to how I'm feeling that day.
But I meant also, then that's interesting as it's everything. But what I meant is terms of from the writer's perspective. Is it better? I never answered this question, so I'm posing to you as well. I think it's not really an answerable question, but is it better to be the type of writer who puts out a ton of work, but is not as so focused on the detail, or is it better to be the one that's like really working and perfecting and puts out less work? There's benefits to both. I know that economically, the ton of work probably seems to work with Amazon, but in terms of like creatively, I'm not sure which is better. And I go back and forth myself on that.
I've talked to a ton of authors, and everybody has their, you could probably classify them into 3 different classifications. Somebody that writes 1 or 2 novels a year, to somebody that puts out, 30 novels a year. Yeah, I've talked to both sides of it, and then the people that are in the middle. And on average, maybe they put out 5 a year or 3 a year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's really what's better. I think it's really whatever that how that writer feels and what's in their heart. Because some people, I know a couple of writers that can whip out 20,000 words a day,
Mm-hmm.
and they write 7 days a week. And, they whip out stuff not only for themselves, but other people, and they write really good stuff. They're best-selling authors. And I know another person who, they release 1 book every 6 months. That is it. And they have a stack of books that they're ready to release, but they only do 2 a year, and they make just as much money as that person that, puts out 20 books a year.
Yeah. So
which one's better? I don't think it's better. I think it's really up to the writer and your readership.
Right. And I think I tend to be more, depends. With poetry is a little different, but with humor writing in particular, a little slower. But I'm slower than those ranges that you said. It depends. It depends on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I do go back and forth because then you look at, okay, since you mentioned him before, he would be a good example of a high output author like Stephen King. He has a very high output. He writes, I think it's not 20,000 a day, but 4,000 a day, something like that.
It's like 3,000 or 4,000 a day is what he
4,000 a day,
right? 2,000, something like that.
Yeah, he's published what, 30 books maybe? I don't know, something like that, maybe more.
I think he's published more than that. He's
maybe 40, because then he did the Richard Bachman things. So maybe 50 books. I don't really know the number, but he's put a lot of work out.
Yep.
And he would be considered prolific, not the most prolific, but and there's other authors, a couple hundred, a Balzac or something. Stayed up all night drinking coffee.
Yep.
So
what's Patterson do, like 14 a year or something like that?
Some of those guys I look at a little differently because they're such big names. Then they have teams write them. So
right.
A lot of times they put out the outline, and it's really not written. They're not really all written by him. They're they're using his name. So
he's a brand.
It's a brand. So I do consider that a little different. But I'm talking about authors. I forgot the name of the romance author. There's a romance author that has like 300 books out, and she's written them all. Like, all of a sudden. But so there is. Put it this way. Here's why I'm mixed on it. I like attention to detail and all that and crafting, and I'm always from that school. But you learn from each project. So
Yes.
if assuming you just go faster through projects, the advantage could be you might have a couple of things that are so-so, and then the fifth novel, because you've learned some skills, is like so much better. Or is it better to just keep working on that baby thing and like perfecting, but then maybe the structuring is as good. So it's hard to say actually, and I don't actually have any answers.
I don't either. I just know that in doing this podcast and also talking to just a ton of different types of authors in the groups that I'm in, everybody's got kind of their own way of doing it. And they find their successes and they have their failures, and it ends up being whatever works for them. And I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it.
Right.
I just really, Andy Pelican, he's an excellent author. He shovels those books out like crazy, and he's, gotten to the point to where he can write a rough draft that's the equivalent to, probably my third draft, of a manuscript. I mean, he's just that good, he's a, very smart, intelligent guy. And that's what he does. He just writes books, and he shovels them out. He'll take a little time off from publishing and just build up his inventory, and then just shove a bunch of more books out there. And he crosses.
Check his work out.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really good. And then there's, like I said, there's people that, do 3 or 4. There's some indie authors that build stables and they publish a book every day, and it's under their name and they're trying to brand themselves like other authors, which, more power to them. If they're making money on it, great. If they're putting out a good product, great. That's not, it's not for everybody. So I look at the quality of books that go out there and whether it's something I want to read or not. And there's a lot of authors that shovel a lot of stuff out that I'll read. And there's other authors that do it. It's like, oh my God, this is just cliche,
Well, if they're able to do it successfully, all power to them.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no, I guess there is no answer to that. But I can say for myself, and I wouldn't recommend anyone follow my way, because my way is maybe not the best. I wouldn't say that I'm the model by any means. Follow the great authors, but for whatever reason, I have tried in the past to use a word count. That doesn't work for me. Only reason is I find it too creatively restricting. I feel like I don't have pressure like that. Now I know pressure is good to a certain extent, but I don't like that pressure. What I do though is give myself time limit. So I'll say like, okay, I have to be at my computer looking at the page for like 1 hour here. And once I have 1 hour, I usually go over it. But the point is I have to I schedule in time. I don't give myself a word count though. And I wonder if it'll be better, but for that I do. So I know in that time, I could sit there and just be like, and just not do anything the whole time. But I'm going to be sitting there at the computer at that time looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked for me to an extent.
I think if I sat there and said, okay, I'm going to build myself up to 10,000 words a day, my guess is that probably 3 days out of the week, I'd write 10,000 words worth of crap.
Right.
And then have to either delete it or seriously edit it or rewrite it or something like that, versus sitting down when I feel like it. And, whether it's 100 words or it's 5,000 words, and I feel it flowing, then you just keep on going. But if you don't feel that, that ebb and flow of writing, then, sometimes it's better off to do something else.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I do try to, there is a persistence. One thing I've changed is I'm more persistent now. So you have to fight through it sometimes, but I just don't give myself the word count. That was like, for some reason, I think it's like, if you go back to that, what was that? The Artist's Way, the Julia Cameron thing. I don't know. I know it's a bit cliche, but that book, I do think there are some good aspects you can get from that book. And her thing about the inner child, it sounds wacky, but there is something to that. My inner child reacts badly to word count, because it's like I got to do this. It becomes more about the then it becomes to me more about the numbers and the words. It becomes mechanical rather than getting the right thing. I want to get the right thing, not the number of things, if you get what I mean. That's how I look at it. That's how I look at it, but I could be wrong. I want to get it right.
I absolutely get what you're saying. I really do. And you know, there are times when a word count's good for me, and there's times when it's like, I'm never going to hit that, you know, so why even try, you know? So I may go and do something else, you know, or I may be, you know, one of my problems is that I will not feel inspired to write what I'm working on, but maybe I'll go write a short story. And then that short story, whether it's connected to my work or not, may inspire me to write the next scene or the next chapter in my series, you know, type things. We're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes, dude.
Okay.
So not to cut this off, but it's been a great conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me on. I really has.
What I'd like to do is just kind of open up an invitation. So the next time you have something coming out, I definitely would like you to come back on.
Awesome. Oh yeah, I would love to do that. It was a great combo. I think we got into some interesting.
I think so too.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I can always tell if I enjoy the conversation, I feel like it's a good podcast, you know, and I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. I really have.
Yeah, me too. I thought we hit a lot of different topics, which was cool. You know, different range.
In closing, is there anything you want to tell your readers before we button this up?
Well, it's hard to say without being self-serving, without putting in a plug. I don't know if we're allowed to do the plug. Or...
I went over the rules, right? There's no rules here. You can plug whatever the hell you want. You can do, you know, I don't care about cursing or anything else. Just go ahead and plug, man. Plug.
Okay, sure. Well, I know we've been talking about it this whole time. I have a few books out there. The two most recent, if you can check it out. One is called Notes from the Bonfire. It was just recently released on Amazon and KDP. It's a poetry book about my time with the coronavirus and responding to it and how it's affected us all. And then another book, which was published within the last year, it's a humor book called Do Not Feed the Clown. And yes, gotten some very good reviews and contemporary topics. So if you could pick that one's available widely, like you can get it at Barnes and Nobles online, even Walmart online, indie bookstores. So and there's some other books out there too, but yeah, if you can check those out and support, I really appreciate it. Any feedback you can leave really is great. And or you know, DM me if you have any thoughts or questions about writing. I always try to be helpful, or I can be of help if someone wants, and I'll support you as well. You share your work with me, and thanks for having me on.
No problem. Just so you know, I'm going to put all the links of your social media and your website and everything. I'll make sure they're in the show notes so people can get to your books and get to, you know, and watch you online and everything else. So again, on that poetry book, excellent job. I loved it. I loved it. With that, I'm going to call this a close to the show. This is Jeff with the DIY Writer Podcast telling you, you know, thanks for listening. Please subscribe on any medium you happen to be listening to this podcast on, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Matt Nagin, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to talk to me. And I hope all of you have a great day and keep your chin up. Bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.